You know what I've noticed recently? Almost all of my videos have been about hero protagonists. And who says you can only learn from the good guys? We have a vast multitude of villains throughout pop culture that we can do a deep dive on. And if you have any suggestions for your guidance guy, just drop a comment and let me know. But for today, we're going to be focusing our energies on the clown prince of crime himself, the Joker. Often regarded as one of, if not the best comic book villain, he's been a thorn in Batman's side for decades now. Not just by his outlandish schemes and near constant war on the city of Gotham, but also by the many ways he's tried to mentally break Batman through increasingly traumatic means. Like the time when he killed Robin, or when he kidnapped everyone in the Bat family, wrapped their heads in bandages, and then had a brainwashed Alfred serve what they thought was their own faces on a platter. Yeah, the Joker's one sick mother. So you may be wondering, what on earth can we possibly learn from this psychopath? Well, if we look at the Joker's backstory, we could find something. In the many retellings of Mr. J's transformation from Joe Schmo to the reason everyone hates clowns, one version makes reference to one bad day that drove him mad. He claims that anyone could become like him if driven far enough over the edge. But is this true? Can enough trauma truly turn you into a mini Joker? I'm the guidance guy, and that's the mystery we're gonna crack today. When talking about everyone's favorite crazy clown, there's quite a bit of variety in choosing which iteration to go with. Do you go with the comic book version? And if so, which one? The Silver Age goofball or the psychotic nutjob that we're all used to? Or do we go the movie route? Heath Ledger, Joaquin Phoenix, or no, not you, Jared, get out now. Nobody asked for you, nobody wants you. If it weren't for that guy, you would have almost ruined the Joker for cinema forever. Oh, you're damaged, alright. You and everyone else in the DCEU, with some exceptions. But for today's discussion, we're going to focus on the 1988 classic comic, The Killing Joke, a story that gives its readers a rare look into the Joker's past and provides insight into just how the Joker came to be. And for those of you who think the movie is always better, there is an animated adaptation of the story that takes some liberties with the source material but still keeps the spirit of the story intact. In The Killing Joke, the Joker sets a plan in action to completely destroy Batman's close friend, Commissioner Gordon. He captures the police commissioner, has him beaten by his goons, and then is forced to view pictures of his daughter Barbara, who had been shot and paralyzed beforehand. And also, Gordon is possibly drugged during the whole ordeal, only intensifying his horrific experience. So why is the Jester of Genocide doing all this? Believe it or not, he's doing this to prove a point. He wants to show the Commissioner, and to a greater extent Batman, that he's not the outlier of humanity that everyone thinks he is. That in reality, any regular person could become just as deranged as him if they simply just had one bad day. And the Joker believes this so strongly because that's exactly what happened to him. The Killing Joke goes back and forth between the past and the present as it shows us the life of the Joker before he was the Ace of Knaves, who is never given a name in the story but is called Jack in other stories that reference these events. Or at least as close to the real story as we know, since the Joker is a compulsive liar and he himself said that he prefers to have his past be multiple choice. So we don't even know if this is the true story, but we'll take his word for it. And as it turns out, the life of the man who would become Batman's greatest nemesis was oddly boring. He had a job, a wife with a kid on the way, the basic regular guy. He's trying to make it as a stand-up comedian, but just can't seem to get the laughs. Things start to get worse when Jack decides to take a job for some crooks in order to get some extra cash for his family. As it turns out, while Jack's planning this heist with the criminals, he finds out that his wife and unborn child had died in an accident back home. Stricken with grief and guilt, he wants out of the plan, but he's in too deep to just walk away now. Fast forward to the plant where Jack used to work, and he's showing the criminals around where they're confronted by security. The heist quickly falls apart with Jack's accomplices getting offed, and then him having a run-in with the Caped Crusader himself. Scared out of his mind, Jack jumps into a vat of chemicals to get away from Batman and ends up outside the chemical plant. But then discovers that his skin has been bleached, his hair is green, and he has a smile so big and red that it terrifies. And that's when he cracks. His failing stand-up career, the loss of his family, the complete disfiguration of his life and body takes him to a place so dark that he hasn't come back from it since. But the Harlequin of hate is stopped by the Dark Knight, of course, and Gordon is able to retain his grasp on reality and insists that Batman take the Joker down by the book, and to not go too far to show him that their way is the best way. So now that we've covered the story, we can answer the main question. Is the Joker's one bad day theory right? Can trauma truly make you go off the rails? For us to test the Joker's mantra that it only takes one bad day, we need to figure out just what flavor of mental instability he's suffering from. And as it turns out, diagnosing fictional characters is a fun little thought experiment that psychologists like to play, with the Joker being one of their main subjects. And with this version of the Joker being the most commonly used iteration of the character in most forms of media, he's often diagnosed with having antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD. In other words, he's a psychopath. The DSM-5, which is the source for defining mental illness, has an extensive criteria that one must qualify in order to be given that label. And Bobo over here checks every single one of them. Egocentric? Check. Manipulative in relationships? Yup. Deceitful, hostile, and lack of concern for other people? Oh yeah, he's got it all. I've put the full criteria in a link in the description, but trust, he's got all the things. He is all the things. So now that we've identified his illness, the next step is discovering when and how ASPD manifests in people. In the 2009 article, Who is at Risk for Antisocial Personality Disorder, a study is conducted to find out just who is more likely to succumb to this illness based on brain structure, environment, and other factors. And what they found was that it's not just one thing that increases the likelihood of ASPD. Factors such as genes, childhood experiences, and even gender all play a role simultaneously. But a common thread that is seen in people with ASPD is that their issues started when they were young. It tends to show up in an ailment called conduct disorder. Going back to the DSM-5, those who suffer from conduct disorder tend to be aggressive to people and animals, lie, steal, and generally break the rules. And these traits do in fact have similarities with full-blown ASPD. But what's unique about conduct disorder is that in the majority of cases, those who display it are either kids or teens. And from the Joker's own admission, he was just a regular guy, with no history of antisocial behavior. So already his life thesis is becoming undone. For most people, if they're going to end up like him, they would be showing signs long before they got the chemical bath. But that trauma though, you may be saying. He still went through all those heartbreaking and disastrous events one after the other. That has to mean something, right? Well, not so fast. Though studies have shown that trauma is more likely to happen to those with mental illness, the only example of trauma causing mental illness is PTSD. And though you could make the case that Jack's multiple traumas could have created a PSD-riddled Joker, take a look at the symptoms. Nightmares, flashbacks, trauma-related thoughts or feelings. That's very much the S in post-traumatic stress disorder. But look at this man. Is there anything about the Joker that implies that he's worried about anything? He's a fearless criminal mastermind. So even though he could have suffered PTSD, it's clear that he doesn't. So there you have it. The Joker's plan to turn Commissioner Gordon would not have worked the way that he intended to, even if the torture did break him. The absolute worst case scenario would have been that Gordon would have suffered some major PTSD as a result of the whole episode, which is far from the callous, manipulative, and lacking of empathy that ASPD demands. But in this story of how far a person can go before they're pushed too far, we see another theme in The Killing Joke: resiliency. It's been said that the Joker and Batman are different sides of the same coin, that they are two different responses to the darkness and chaos that exists in our world. Batman gave purpose to his tragedy by fighting to ensure that no other child would endure the same trauma that he did, while the Joker saw no reason to go on except to see life as a twisted, meaningless joke and to make everyone suffer because of it. And at the core of both of their choices is resiliency. The Joker chose to give up on hope, to surrender any notion that as bad as his life got in very quick succession, that it could get better. He chose to go to such a dark place that he believes that anyone can take the same course he did if life inflicted enough on them. But for Batman, he sees the hope that humanity is capable of. He knows what it's like to hit rock bottom due to no fault of your own, but he also knows how to recover, to make a comeback, to rise up. For the record, the Joker's assumptions that essentially you can choose to lose your mind is not reality. Nobody chooses insanity. It's not a switch that you can turn on and off. But you can choose how you will live your life. Life will try to bring you down sometimes, to test you, to see if you have what it takes to see the end of the ordeal. And sadly, the Joker didn't have that resiliency. He gave up before he gave himself the chance to make that turnaround. He chose that fate. Don't make that same mistake. Rely on your support systems, your friends, your family, and always remember, it doesn't matter how bad one day can be. You have the power to make the next day better. When talking about Harley Quinn, it's perhaps impossible to talk about her without bringing up the ace of knaves himself, the Joker. And a while back, I did a guidance guy on the Dark Clown. So if all this Harley talk has you curious about the Joker, I'll put a link in the upper corner right there. In that video, we went into whether or not it was possible for the Joker to have ended up the way he did in our world. And though deep dives of the various versions of her past, many people have tried to diagnose the Maiden of Mischief, we're not going to be doing that today. Our goal today is to show through Harley's actions how people can become not psychotic murdering sidekicks, but willful puppets of someone else's will. And in order to do that, we need to start at how Miss J got involved with Mr. J in the first place. In most stories that mention Harley's backstory, the tale begins in her days as a psychiatrist working at Arkham Asylum. That's right, people, the Cupid of crime is a doctor. And yes, let's cue the irony of a mental health professional becoming the head hench girl of the most dangerous comic book villain of all time. But here she is, Dr. Harleen Quinzel, rolling into Arkham ready to do some shrink work. But little do those around her know that Dr. Q has some ulterior motives. In both the Batman Adventures and the Batman Animated Series episode Mad Love that first go into Harley's origin story, it's shown that the Doctor's intention for working at the Arkham Madhouse was to gain fame and notoriety for curing the super criminals there. Sounds like we got ourselves a clout chaser, people. So we have ourselves someone who is willing to work with the most unstable human beings in Gotham City, not because of her passion for people, not so she can perhaps help Poison Ivy or Two-Face make breakthroughs that no one else has been able to do. She did it to capitalize on their dysfunction and to catapult her career. But little did she know what was in store for her. She then ends up becoming assigned to the biggest fish in the Arkham pond, the Joker himself. So she starts working with him. But what ends up happening is that the Joker ends up working her. Through lies, half-truths, and manipulation, the Joker gets his doctor to not just see things his way, not just to possibly empathize and understand his perspective, but to agree with his perspective. The Joker's nihilism, disdain, and disregard for human life, and of course, his hatred for the Dark Knight all got transferred to Dr. Q so successfully that eventually she broke the Clown Prince of Crime out of Arkham. And she's been at his side ever since, for the most part. And throughout her time as the Joker's right-hand lady, she has stood by her man, even as he's done some of the most heinous crimes in the DC universe. And it's natural to look at Harley's story and go, well, that's a comic book story. That can't happen in real life. You'd think that, except reality doesn't really add up that way. It's perfectly fine to be a fan of something. We all have our activities, pieces of media, and even people that we find ourselves naturally gravitating to. And if you're a fan of your guidance guy, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe while you're here. Having those hobbies and diversions can be used to help us connect with other people, find our own passion, and overall enrich our lives. But those same diversions can also become distractions, which is what happens to the Stan. They take something that is perfectly normal and take it to a level that it was never meant to be for. Be it someone who goes through life as if they are a character in a movie, or in the case with Harley, completely excusing away the behavior of their partner thinking that they can do no wrong. And what we see with our ultimate Stan are traits that we need to be careful of if we're not to fall into the same trap. And there's a lot of these, so let's get comfortable. The first sign we see in Harley is a need for validation and identity. The reason why our duplicitous doctor decided to take on patients at Arkham was to make a name for herself. It wasn't enough for her that she had spent all those years in school to get her degree and was in a very vital and important career field. She wanted to stand out. Now, there's nothing wrong with ambition, the guy's guy ain't saying that. The problem comes when this ambition is rooted in selfish desire. She wanted to cure an Arkham patient, not as a way to help them or even a way to serve the clients of Gotham who have to suffer through their antics, but as a way to get a leg up in her career. People who tend to stand do so because they also lack a firm sense of who they are. They would rather attach themselves to either another person or the ideas, concepts, and stories of others instead of creating something on their own or analyzing the value of what they can bring to the table. So without the inner connection, they stick themselves to someone who has. But let's put that away for now. The next trait that we see in our girl clown is that she's easily manipulated. Now, this shouldn't be the case, you may be thinking. Harley was a doctor, and a doctor of the mind at that. She should have been able to see through the Joker's mind games and his lies, right? Nah, you right. She was trained in how to work with psychopaths and how they operate in a therapeutic setting. She should have been ready for him. She should have seen through his games, but instead, she got played. The Joker was able to get to her by fabricating stories about his life, like an abusive father that may or may not have existed, or by framing himself as the helpless victim of the evil bully Batman who's always getting in the way of his innocent fun. But instead of working him through those lies and helping him discover why he needs to lie as a way to control people, she goes all the way with it. She seems almost too willing to believe him, as if she wanted to believe him. And in our world, it's a similar situation. Everyone loves a good story, and the only thing better than hearing a good story is being a part of a good story. And with real life stands, they lack the great story about themselves that gives them purpose, which leads them wandering through life looking for the most amazing, unbelievable narrative to join up with so they can participate in something greater than themselves. And sometimes those narratives are in fact unbelievable, because they aren't true. This is partially how some people end up believing conspiracy theories like the flat earth nonsense. They buy into it not because the science is on their side or because the logic behind the movement is so airtight that no one can refute it. Because no, it's not, anyone can. But because deep inside, they want to believe this bull jive. And because they crave purpose and connection, they become more gullible, more susceptible to lies and half-truths. And because Dr. Q wanted so much to make a name for herself, she was easy prey for the master criminal. We also see in the case of our Hammer Girl in Everyday Stands is that they tend to mindlessly follow. After turning in her degree in medicine for a degree in destruction, Quinn dedicates her life not just to the crime life, but to the one who introduced her to that life. Listen, when I say that HQ is the ultimate stan, I mean it. Sure, there are times that we see her and the Mad Clown cutting it up and reveling in their nihilistic ways, but you'll notice that whenever Batman shows up, whenever things get tough, guess who's the one who gets stuck holding the bag? Who's the one left to take the fall? Come now, you know it ain't this guy. Countless times Harley has been left to hold up B-Man while the Joker makes his getaway alone. There have been so many occasions that Quinn has returned to Arkham with her puddin' running free with no intention of busting her out. But no matter how many times she's been left behind and became the patsy, she always comes back. Once she connects to her boo-thang, it's like nothing ever happened. It's like he didn't leave her out there to dry. It's fine. It's all fine. And again, we see the same pattern of behavior in real life stands. Think of a situation where a celebrity or a public figure messed up, like they did something real bad, really inexcusable. And let's be real here, in this day and age, it's not hard to come up with examples. Most people will realize to distance themselves from that toxic situation and walk away. But the stands though, they're still there. They're still liking and following that figure, and they become volunteer members of that person's PR group and start spinning the situation. They create narratives to explain away the unexplainable. And they do this, why? Because they need to hold on to the story that they've put themselves in, to prop up the flimsy purpose that they've given themselves that is nothing like the one that they could actually have if they actually took a hold of their own lives. Because if the narrative that they've stick to falls apart, then they run the risk of falling into despair. And here is the crux of it all. This is the factor that connects everything together between DC Superstan and the ones we see online or IRL. And it's the factor of low self-esteem. And this factor explains everything we see in Harley Quinn. It's the reason why she was willing to help people for selfish and shady purposes, because she felt that despite being a frickin' doctor, she still felt like she hadn't accomplished enough, that she wasn't enough as she was. It's why she allowed herself to become a pawn of Gotham's most dangerous criminal despite having all the skills to avoid that fate. She wanted to give her life meaning and purpose, so she hitched up with one of the most infamously meaningful people in the city. And it's why that, even now with all the breakups and makeups that she's had over the years, she keeps coming back to this lunatic. Because she needs to stay connected to the mass murderer, because she believes that she won't be able to make a name for herself. She wouldn't be able to make an impact or matter without him. And all that doesn't happen unless you have a low self-regard. The reason for Harleen's basement-level self-esteem could be traced back to her childhood. The comics have expanded into Harley's childhood and revealed that she had to deal with an abusive father growing up. Yup, daddy issues, she's got them. And for everyday stands, it could be that. Or maybe a life full of struggle, or a life where reality didn't match up to their expectations. But some way, somehow, they see themselves at such a low level that they're willing to attach themselves to anything that looks like a version of the life that they wanted for themselves. And this can become something so seemingly harmless or cause actual harm to relationships if they fully buy into the fantasy. So how can we avoid the fate of the Stan? How could we avoid the pitfalls laid out here? Let's not front ourselves here. We all love a good villain, and Harley Quinn has been just that in her storied history in the world of DC. She has the presence, the looks, and the charisma to make an impact, so much so that we really can't say that we love to hate her, because the hate just ain't there. But behind the over-the-top accent and the Looney Tunes hammer she carries around, we have a rather sad story of a woman whose identity has become aligned with a maniac. And naturally, most of us aren't at risk of falling in love with a deranged person. But in an age where unnatural attachments to people have become so prevalent that January was Stalking Awareness Month, yeah, that was real. We need to be vigilant about our own weaknesses. And the most effective way to do that is by making sure our self-esteem is where it needs to be. And the first step in that is by finding value in yourself. What do you like about yourself? What are your character traits, habits, and actions that you know give value to yourself and others? Notice how I didn't say what you do. As I said in my Vegeta video, what you do can be a great source of pride in yourself, but if that's all you got, you're setting yourself up for a massive fall if something were to happen to that identity you've built. How you treat people, how you face challenges, what you do that doesn't directly impact you, that's the well that you should be drawing from. Next step, don't see yourself as the victim. Crap's gonna happen in your life. It's harsh, it's painful, and it sucks, but it's also true. And the thing that separates those who succeed in life and have joy from those who don't comes down to how they react to adversity. Victims will blame, shift responsibility, and allow their pain to become part of who they are. Others will learn from their hard times, realize where they fell short and make sure it doesn't happen again, and though they may still have scars from their experiences, they don't let the scars define them. And finally, they ask questions. They don't simply believe whatever an authority figure tells them simply because they have power. Like the old saying goes, question authority. Ask tough questions, and if there are people who don't want to give you those answers, go find them yourself. Because I'm sure that if our girl Harley did those things before she stepped into Arkham, who knows, she may have been able to cure the clown. Like I said, enjoying things is a part of life, but at no point should those things, be it media or people, override who you are or how you see the world. Because as we've seen with Harley, the world of the Stand is nothing but a world of madness. When looking at any couple, you have to start with how they met. Because looking into how a relationship starts can tell us a lot about where it's gonna go in the future. Depending on the situation, the way a couple gets together sets the foundation for habits, dynamics, and ways of being that become normalized. And this is not always a bad thing. There are couples who get together that live life in a way that is unconventional to those around them, but because it's constructive to them and it has a positive impact on them, they continue to do it because it works. Like say, the married couple who does marathons together as a bonding experience. Trust, I ain't running no marathon. I'm more of a sprinter myself. But if doing that helps a couple stay in love, then more power to them. Don't try to stop them. But in the case of the clown prince and princess, we see the beginnings of the utter dysfunction that has defined their relationship throughout the years. Dr. Harleen Quinzel meets our crazy clown when she starts working at Arkham Asylum and begins doing therapy with him. Now, I have no idea why the Arkham psychiatrist thought it was a good idea to send a fresh, straight out of grad school doctor to do therapy with the most notorious criminal in the place. Seriously, and by herself? No help, no assistance, just, look chick, we tried, it's your turn now. But whatever. Things start going south almost immediately as the Joker starts manipulating his past in order to manipulate Dr. Q. He'll talk about his father who abused him and how he tried to make his old man happy, or other tragic events in his childhood that the Jester of Genocide would use to get sympathy from his therapist. The problem, of course, is that likely none of what he said was true. But that's what happens when you work with a pathological liar. They not only lie, but they're so accustomed to twisting the truth that not only are they able to sell their version of reality to others, they can convince themselves of their own fabrications. And Mr. J didn't do all this to get some pity points. He did it because he saw Quinzel as an easy target. He knew why she wanted to work with him, so that she could become the one to cure the clown. He saw her insecurity, her need for validation and belonging, and he knew exactly what he needed to do to not just get his doctor to believe him, but to want to join up with him. So right here, we see the beginnings of manipulation as a norm in this first couple of crime. The Joker knows what buttons to push, what strings to pull in order to get what he wants out of Harley Quinn. The Ace of Knaves is able to take advantage of Quinn's desire for recognition and craving to belong and purpose to get her to do anything he wants. Be it helping him plot mass murder or willingly be the fall girl that goes back to Arkham while he gets away scot-free. And from Harley's point of view, we see her adopt a twisted perspective. She doesn't see her Putin as the psychotic anarchist that he is. And it's not because she can't. Come now, she's a psychiatrist for crying out loud. No, she doesn't see the truth because she chooses not to. She's so enraptured by her charismatic, smooth-talking patient that she chooses to ignore the fact that the man she's falling for is a green-haired nihilist with no regard for human life. She chooses to see her man in a positive light, even if she has to make up that light herself. And it's that combination of shameless manipulation and a twisted perspective that explains how these two were together for so long. Sure, in some versions Harley's out of the clutches of the Joker, but the reason why she stuck with him for so long was because she refused to see him for who he really was, because she feared that a reality without him was worse than a reality with him. And with that understanding, the madman had a carte blanche to treat her any way he wanted and get away with it. And trust, we're gonna get into that in a moment. And it's that dynamic that explains why these two have been responsible for some of the most heinous acts in Gotham, like the murder of Jason Todd, the second Robin in the comics, or kidnapping and brainwashing Robin number 3, Tim Drake, into a mini Joker. Or simply all the times Harley stood by for every time her boo hijacked TV stations to threaten violence or approved of a diabolical chemical attack on the citizens of Gotham. Obviously, this is not an example of love goals. This is not a couple anyone should want to emulate, because the end result of a relationship involving one partner that writes a blank check to every kind of action and another who will say or do anything to get what they want is nothing less than mistreatment and abuse. Now, before we move on, I do want to give some warnings first. This part of the video is going to dig into examples of physical and psychological mistreatment. If seeing or hearing examples of this kind of thing brings you to a dark place, then feel free to skip out or just to walk out now. And if you find yourself thinking that you may be in a situation like the ones being discussed, please be sure to get some help. I've put some resources in the description to get you started. Like we said, we have ourselves a couple in which one partner is a conniving, selfish sociopath, and the other a complete stan who will put up with anything the other does, even if it's directed at them. And between the movies, the comics, and the animated series, the nature of their relationship is not pretty in the slightest. There are more than a few times that we've seen Harley get smacked around by the Joker for literally doing nothing, and often she's trying to be helpful. but the instances we see in the comics go way beyond basic shock value. For example, in the rebooted DC Universe comics, The New 52, the Clown Prince of Crime actually dies, leaving the princess wandering without purpose. But what ends up happening is that she joins the Suicide Squad, and in her time there she begins to heal herself, her self-esteem, and she actually emotionally moves on from her toxic love affair. That is, until Mr. J comes back, because he always does, and then he tortures her, chaining her to a wall surrounded by corpses dressed up like her, all for the sake of breaking her newfound independence. Or how about the time that he gave her flowers as a romantic gesture, only to shoot her in the stomach point blank? Or how about this? In the story Injustice Gods Among Us Year 2, HQ gets pregnant. Yes, this happens. And she disappears to have the baby, knowing that her man wouldn't want anything to do with the situation. And when she inevitably comes back, Old Red Hood acts like he didn't even notice his woman was gone for 12 months. And naturally, when we hear about situations like this, when someone is being severely mistreated by someone else, the obvious question that comes up is, why don't they just leave? Harley's an adult, she can take care of herself, why can't she just get up and leave the situation? The thing is, we gotta remember, is that Harley Quinn doesn't want to leave. She desires to be in this dysfunctional mess of a relationship. But how? With control. Like I said, the Harley Quinn of hate is a master manipulator, and he uses an array of techniques to control his high-energy sidekick. The Women's Rural Resource Center goes into detail on these techniques, and one of the most common tactics used in these relationships is gaslighting. This is the method of causing someone to doubt their experiences and perception of reality for the sake of manipulating the target. An example of this would be if your brother accuses you of taking his phone that you both know you didn't take, but he doubles down and tries to make you believe that you snagged his phone. He may say things like, "I know you did it," or "I saw you take it when you thought I wasn't looking." And even though you know the truth, the confidence and fake convictions of the words you're hearing cause you to doubt the facts of your own memory. And with these two, Joker has Quinn on lockdown so hard that she gaslights herself whenever she calls his beatdowns tough love, or makes excuses for his trash treatment of her. She's either repeating what the Joker has told her in the past, or she's creating narratives in her mind to explain away her situation in order to avoid reality. A second trick used in this situation is isolation. This can come in many forms. It can be physical isolation, in which the victim is left by themselves as a form of punishment for crossing their tormentor, leaving them without food or water or human contact. But it can also come in the form of social isolation. This is often seen in cult groups. They will separate their members from their family, their friends, aka people who will speak out against the crazy going on around them and will try to talk sense into the victim. And we see both of those with our girl Harley. In the Joker's attempt to recondition Harley in the New 52 that we mentioned earlier, she experiences physical isolation. But in her everyday, Harley is in a bubble of social isolation. She's not seen with anyone other than the Joker. She doesn't have any friends or connections outside of her man's crew. It's not until she breaks out of the Joker's control that her horizons start to expand. And even if you're not in a situation like this, and even if you are, there is hope and you can get out, we still need to be aware in order to avoid what happened to our Cupid of crime, and the answer comes down to one word: culture. When we hear the word culture, we tend to think about the music, language, or religion of a group of people, and that's definitely an example of that word. But culture can also apply to our relationships to other people and ourselves. Harley Quinn and the Joker's relationship was built on a culture just like any other. The problem was that the culture was based on manipulation and the denial of facts and reality. Their culture was one of tolerating mistreatment for the sake of acceptance and purpose, and on the other hand, controlling someone for the sake of getting what one wants. And as we've seen, that's not the kind of culture anyone should want to be a part of. But like I said in my Harley video, the reason Quinn is in this situation in the first place is because of her inner culture. Her self-esteem had deep flaws. Before we can even think about connecting with someone else, make sure you're where you want to be, both in life goals and in your inner life. Do you respect yourself? Do you tolerate other people's nonsense for their sake? Do you love yourself? You have to start there. If your inner culture is one of self-respect, self-care, and compassion for others and yourself, you're on the right path. And if not, like I say, reach out for help, because that battle is not meant to be fought alone. Relationships create a culture for two, and the norms and expectations created there are a reflection of the people within it. And whether we're talking about a relationship you have with someone else, or the most important relationship, the one you have with yourself. During this Valentine's Day weekend, ask yourself, what's your culture like? Because the answer to that question will lead to either loving calm or chaotic calamity. You know, saying something like, I think Wonder Woman is better than both Superman and Batman on the internet is one of those hot takes that become one of the fastest ways to get people riled up. You'll get people from all sides shouting their opinions at everyone and saying how much everyone else is wrong and that they're right because they have a particular opinion. Now look, this ain't Death Battle. I'm not gonna scientifically prove that Wonder Woman would wreck either the big Boy Scout or the big Brooder in a fight, but what I am going to do is show that between the three of them, Diana shows the most superhero traits in the DCEU movies. And the first one we're gonna look at is her motivation. Having a why behind the things we do is a massive factor for any endeavor we partake. And in hero work, answering the question of why is often the driving force that propels the hero forward no matter what happens. For Iron Man, it was to make amends for the legacy of his company and to make the world a safer place. And for Spider-Man, it was to make the best use of his abilities. No great hero does what they do for no reason or just because. There's always a deep personal motivation that fuels their actions. For Wonder Woman, her motivation comes from her desire to protect the world from Ares, the god of war. She's heard the story of how Ares tried to destroy humanity out of jealousy, and as the other gods stood up against them, all of them fell to him except the granddaddy of them all, Zeus, who was able to force Ares out, but even that took everything the lightning god had. And the Amazonians had been training ever since, preparing for the day that Ares might return. And through millennia had passed, they had not abandoned the mission. They were ever vigilant of the threat of the fallen warmonger. And Diana was quick to take on the warrior lifestyle for people, despite being the princess of the Amazons and thus not being required to get her hands dirty. But Di didn't think like that. She was enthralled by the way of the Amazon and was trained by her aunt in the art of combat, even if it took some persuasion on the part of her mother, Queen Hippolyta. And then the day arrived that the men showed up. Steve Trevor, being followed by German soldiers, find their way to the hidden island. After the Germans are taken care of, the Amazons take Steve hostage to find out just what he's doing in their realm. He tells them about the Great War, a conflict in which the entire world has taken sides, the human toll of battle is unlike anything anyone's ever seen, and that the Germans are plotting to use a superweapon to use on the Allied soldiers to win the war. Diana quickly sees not only what's at stake, but who's to blame for the whole situation. Ares is back, and she wastes no time getting into action to stop her half-brother. And here comes the big question. Why? Why is Wonder Woman rushing into battle like this? As her sisters tell her, man got themselves into World War I. They can get themselves out of it without their help. And maybe that's true. Perhaps man's world could have won the war without the assistance from the gods, but Diana knew what her goal was. She knows why she and her sisters trained every single day. They needed to be ready for this exact moment. And this isn't just basic bloodlust either. She knew that humanity needed someone to save them from the dangers that the war was bringing them. She knew that man's world needed saving, and she had the means to help, and she was going to do whatever it took to get the job done. And as she enters man's world and interacts with the people around it, she begins to put faces to her vague ideas of what humans are like. She meets people who are willing to fight for a just cause. She sees the suffering that war brings to those who don't engage in its battles. She goes from fighting to stop Ares and bring peace to humans, to fighting to save humanity and those she has come to care about and love. Now, let's compare that to the guys with the capes. With Superman, what exactly motivates him? What makes him get up in the morning and want to protect Metropolis and the world from the unending dangers that befall it? In most iterations of the character, we see Supes go into the fray for either Metropolis, the world, other worlds, and even the entire multiverse for one simple reason. It's the right thing to do. His motivation for doing anything while wearing the S is to do the best good. That's it. No matter how difficult or painful the decision may be, his moral compass is so on point that he rarely deviates from it. But that's the old school version of Superman. What about the dark, gritty, realistic version of the last son of Krypton that we got from Snyder? Why does he do what he does? Well, that's the thing, isn't it? In Man of Steel, we see a whole bunch of flashbacks of him doing heroic stuff, either as a kid or as an adult, but we never really see why he does those things. In fact, he spends a great deal of the movie trying to find said motive. It's as if he's saying, yeah, I have super strength, heat vision, superhuman speed, and a bunch of other fun powers, but what am I supposed to do with them? On a certain level, it's a little embarrassing that the prototype for superheroes is having such a hard time finding his calling. We see him hem and haw over this issue for over 2 hours to eventually get the answer of, I'll protect people because Lois wants me to? Really? I get that Lois is an important character in the Superman story and does in fact play a huge factor in his motivation to be a hero, but for Snyder's Superman, she appears to be his only motivation. So you're telling me that if Big Blue never met Lois, what would have happened? He would have joined General Zod, let him terraform the Earth, and he would have just found another planet to brood on? I'm sorry, but that's not a hero level motivation. But that's not to say that people can't motivate heroes to action. I mean, that's what happened with Batman, right? We all know the story. After a fun family movie night, Bruce Wayne and his parents are on their way home when they are mugged by a random criminal. In the process, both of Bruce's parents are murdered, and the trauma that follows stirs him to become the Dark Knight. We see this portrayed very simply and effectively in Dawn of Justice. I mean, we all know what happened that one night in Crime Alley. Almost every Batman film reminds us of that fact. There's no need to dwell on it. Yeah, childhood trauma can be a massive factor on one's development. In fact, research has shown that it can impact a child by stunting the way a child interacts with other people, it can limit their emotional range, and even how a child's brain grows can be negatively impacted by trauma. So Wonder Woman's motivation for her life's work can be considered at least on the level of DCEU Batman and bets this version of Superman easily. But that's just one factor. The next one is where we see a little bit more distinction. Compassion. Compassion is a word that's often used as a synonym for other words, like empathy, sympathy, or even pity. And at their core, these words have the same theme, the idea of caring for another person. But as a school counselor, I see these three words more as a progression. Think of the words sympathy, empathy, and compassion like the stages of a Pokemon evolving. Why am I using Squirtle as opposed to, say, Charmander? Because 1, Squirtle Squad for life, and 2, aren't we all tired of Charizard getting all the non-Pikachu shine in this franchise? Charizard has been a starter, a box mascot twice, has 2 Mega Evolutions, and a Gigantamax form. Every good thing that happens in Pokemon happens to the Flame Dragon. Can't we just share the love to someone else for a change? But anyway, we start our emotional journey with sympathy, feeling bad for someone's situation. Easy, right? Something unfortunate happens to someone, you feel some pity for them. But that sympathy grows into empathy when we're able to put ourselves in that person's bad situation. When we're able to imagine how we'd feel if that bad thing happened to us, that's using empathy. And of course, empathy can be used for good things too. However, it's compassion that's the final form. Compassion goes beyond just simply feeling bad or projecting someone's bad situation onto ourselves, but actually doing something about it. You can show sympathy and empathy with words, but compassion is the only one you show with action. It's doing something because you feel for them, not just stopping at the feels. And it's this action that Wonder Woman shows all throughout the film. As she hears Steve's account of the war going on in man's world, she quickly transitions from simply feeling sorry for the humans, which is something that some of her sisters don't even bother to entertain, to deciding that something must be done about it, even if she's the only one who believes that. She even goes as far as stealing the armor and leaves with Trev to the world outside her home. And we see it again when she gets to the battlefield. Diana sees the pain and suffering that has brought on by World War I when they arrive in Germany, and what's her first move? To the battlefield where she knows she could do the most good, and quickly delivers and becomes a force that changes the tides of war. Do we see that same kind of compassion in our other two heroes? Now, to be fair, In Man of Steel, one can make the argument that young Clark shows compassion by saving his classmates from drowning on a sinking bus, or by any other heroic action he takes in order to save another person. But let's go a little deeper here. Though it is straight facts that little Clark did save his friends from the bus and as an act of compassion, we all remember what happened after that scene, right? Superboy talks about the incident with his dad, who disagrees with what he did, and Clark has to argue that he did the right thing by not letting school children die. And it all culminates when Clark asks Jonathan straight up, should I just let them die? And what does he say?
Maybe.
This is what I mean when I say the DCEU doesn't understand its own characters, because I'm certain that any other version of Jonathan Kent would not have even thought that letting kids die was okay as long as his son's secret was kept safe. And events like that must have had an impact on Clark, because later on in his life, he comes back to his mother to see if he should be the hero that he can be for humanity. He wants to make sure that he's doing the right thing, that his actions will be for the better good. But Mama Ken also throws water on his ambitions by saying, be their hero, or don't be. I'm sorry, what? So we have a version of Superman who's been told by his earthly parents that he can do good in the world, but he really doesn't have to, and if he doesn't want to, that's cool too. Is it really a wonder why then he's able to wreck up Metropolis without much thought later on in the movie? It's like he does care, but not about everybody, and even then, not too much. Frankly, it seems like his concern for humanity is little more than an extension of Lois Lane's concern for humanity. He cares about people because she does. Sorry, one doesn't become the defender of truth, justice, in the American way by the way of vicarious compassion. Looking at Bats though, his compassion is at least his own. In the first moments of Dawn of Justice, we go back to the clash between Supes and Zod, but through Bruce's perspective. We see him go into dust clouds to save people from collapsing buildings. We see him trying to comfort those in absolute terror. That's compassion, and that's the Batman that Bill Finger had intended. A dark hero who's still a hero at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not he has the suit on. But unfortunately, Wayne's compassion, like Kent's, is also compromised. Because as it turns out, Batman only has compassion for you as long as you haven't broken the law. Because once you've done that, he don't care. He'll beat you to a pulp, shoot at you, brand you like cattle. This guy don't care if he kills you because in his mind, you're already dead. Not exactly the kind of guy that would throw his rogues gallery in Arkham. They'd be more like Dragon Ball Z villains. Enjoy them while you can, because they ain't coming back. For the most part. But that's not all. Lastly, let's take a look at Diana's general worldview on life. For this one, we're gonna start with DC's bad boys for life, because despite their different beginnings, the way the both of them look at life has some stark similarities. And with this, we're gonna have to start with the Caped Crusader himself. This man's outlook has been formed by the tragedy of losing his parents at a young age in a violent way. He has seen the darkness in the world. He's not only seen how low humanity could go, he's been a victim of it. In almost every iteration of the Dark Knight, they portray him as a cynic, a skeptic of almost everyone and everything. Almost every iteration, alright? We see especially when he's in the company of someone younger and more optimistic, be it any of the Robins or Terry McGinnis, when they want to see the best in people, when they want to believe, old Bats is right there going, don't do it, it's a trap, it will only lead to disappointment. But at the same time, Batman is not only all darkness and gloom. Sure, everyone makes fun of him for being a chronic brooder and never cracking a smile, but at his core, Bruce Wayne cares about humanity. Deep inside, he still believes that people can change, which is why he opts to throw his enemies into prison or Arkham instead of just ending them in the streets. He's a reluctant pessimist. He knows the odds of change are unlikely, but he's still willing to roll the dice that maybe this time, the Penguin, Riddler, Catwoman, or whoever will make that pivot this time. And it's clear that this worldview made its way to the DCEU. Because again, the first time we see him, he's out there saving people, putting his life on the line for the citizens of Metropolis. And it's not even in costume. He knows the way the world should work, which is why he does what he does, but he also knows the way the world does work, which explains his methods. But even still, Snyder's version of Batman has to go one up on the dark and gritty by making Wayne a straight up murderer. His Batmobile rolls around with military-style weapons, with guns ready to make holes in some felons, and even he carries a gun, which breaks the golden rule of Batman. Batman don't carry guns, but the world's greatest detective in the DCEU has a complete disregard for life. So Batman appears to be closest in his comic incarnation in regards to worldview, but it's still far from the target of being a hero. So what about the hero of all heroes? Like we said before, the Man of Tomorrow is a classic example of a superhero, doing the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. Pretty open and shut standard, right? Or at least you'd think so, but in the DCEU, we gotta have our heroes be morally ambiguous and do things that cause us to question them. Whenever DCEU Superman does something heroic, just look at his face. What emotions get conveyed from him? Is it inspiration? Hope? Relief? Nope. At best, you get steely indifference and mild irritation at worst. It's like saving people from the jaws of death is an inconvenience to him. Like he was late for a dinner date, saw what was happening and went, "Dang it, this looks like a job for Superman. Let's just get this over with." It's that attitude that seems to fit someone who's apathetic to the needs of the people he's around and sworn to protect. There's no warmth coming from this guy. It's very mechanical. It's as if he saw a more upbeat version of Superman, tried to copy it, and just couldn't execute it. And I'm sorry, that's not Superman. This is a character who in some versions puts up with mild harassment from jerky co-workers as Clark Kent when he could just crush them with the world's worst side-eye. This is the man who has held off on marrying Lois in some versions because he doesn't want to put her in danger of being connected to Superman. Well, you know, any more danger than she already is on a daily basis. But that's not the last Son of Krypton we get in the DCEU. He does the right thing, but in Man of Steel, he spends so much time trying to find out why he should do the right thing that by the end of the film, we're just told that, hey look, he gets it now, he's Superman, trust us, without any real convincing evidence that he has. Even after he kills his fellow Kryptonian, his worldview doesn't change to, I'll never kill again, which is, the rule for Superman. He just accepts that he's the world's champion and continues to do his thing. And even as he does it, he's going through the motions. It portrays a Superman that saves the world day in and day out like it's a 9-to-5 job, without passion, without much care for those around him, not named Lois Lane. So that's the example of the world's finest that the DCEU has given us. However, with Wonder Woman, we get a refreshingly different picture. When Diana decides to enter man's world and by extension the war, the other Amazons aren't really psyched about helping Trevor's cause. They almost have a Superman approach to it. Why is that my problem? But Diana isn't stopped by that. She's been trained for battle ever since she was young, and now she sees the battle has arrived and she's ready to go even if she's the only one suiting up. In the beginning, she does this out of duty. This is my role to play and I must do what I was trained to do. That's her mindset, very much like a soldier. But we see this soldier mentality change over the course of the film. As she sees the carnage and destruction that the war brings and how it impacts those whose only mistake was being in the line of fire, she realizes that there's more to this mission than just stop the bad guy from doing a bad. She realizes that she has the opportunity to help people who can't help themselves, to get rid of an evil that has caused motherless children and tortured war survivors. Wonder Woman's goals evolve from a military mission to a humanitarian one. She no longer just wants to stop her half-brother from destroying the world, she's out to protect the good that she has seen in the world, to ensure that Ares doesn't bring doom to the ideas of justice, hope, and love. And as she gets closer to Trevor and he later makes the ultimate sacrifice to ensure that same goal, Diana realizes once and for all what sometimes has to be done to protect your ideals. And as time moves on, as she joins up with the Gloom Squad to take down Doomsday, she does it not simply because he's the big bad and she has to. She does it because she wants to. She knows what she's fighting for. Doomsday was like Ares before him, a monster bent on causing havoc around the world just for the sake of it. Diana wasn't going to allow that to happen. Not out of duty or because she was partially responsible for the whole mess in the first place, because unlike her super friends, she fully believes in the good in people and the good that they can produce. That humanity has the right to be free from tyranny and fear. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the worldview of a hero. Like I said at the beginning of the video, Our world is a giant mess right now, and as we see this raging dumpster fire of a year continue, we see a lot of the same problems that the DCEU's versions of Batman and Superman have in our own society. For some, their worldview is an utter mess. Long gone is the idea of doing good for others because it's the right thing to do. The only thing that matters is one's own self-interest. If someone can be useful to you for a while, great, then ditch them once you're done. If not, then keep moving, because if they can't help you, then what good are they? We also have people's motivations for their actions based on that same worldview of what's in it for them. We've seen leaders that don't care about those they're supposed to lead, rather it's all about how much they can benefit themselves in a bad situation, even if it comes at the expense of those they're supposed to look out for. And this all sums up in a dire lack of compassion. If you're only looking out for number one, then why bother thinking about how other people will feel, much less do anything for them? Of course, I'm not blaming the DCEU movies for any of this. Humanity has had these issues long before the concept of the superhero. But what I do see is that Wonder Woman may just be the best hero we need in times like this based on the example she's given. Someone who goes out of their way to do good by others because of their concern for other people other than themselves. A person whose motives are about the betterment of those around them, not just me, myself, and I. A hero who sees the world for what it can be and fights for that potential better future. And who says it can't be us? Who says that in our own corner of the world we can't take up a cause in which we care for other people, not out of selfish gain, but for the gain of our fellow human? Or believe that as dark as things are, that they can get better and that we can do something about it. And often the best way to enact change is on a personal level. Yeah, we all wish we could save all the world's problems overnight and bring about that utopia that we all have in our heads, but every city is made up of individuals, and making a difference in the lives of individuals can have a powerful impact as well. It could be a conversation with someone you haven't seen in a while, helping someone that you see who needs help. A lot of the time it comes down to meeting the needs of people in a way that only you can in that moment. No, it's not as dramatic as saving the world or leading the way to societal change, but even those with the capes and the masks know that if you're not willing to save just one person, then how will you be willing to save multitudes? And that's the defining trait that makes Wonder Woman a shining beacon in an otherwise bleak universe. The Teen Titans have been through quite a lot of change in their time in the superhero space. Starting out as a landing zone for DC sidekicks, they've evolved from simply being the Junior Justice League to being a legitimate force on their own. It used to be that people didn't know who Cyborg or Raven was, but nowadays you won't go too long before you find somebody who can go, "Oh yeah, I know who you're talking about." And with any long-running series, we've seen them change, not just in numbers, because yeah, this crew has way more members than the Fat Five over here, but they've also changed in how they've been portrayed. And, well, you know where I'm going with this. For the longest time, I've had a massive problem with Teen Titans Go. I truly hated this show and what I thought it represented, and I couldn't stand it as it began its domination of Cartoon Network's schedule lineup. But over time, my opinion has changed. But before we go further, don't forget to do the YouTube thing. Like this video if these things are helpful for you, subscribe if you haven't already, and put on those notifications. Cause your boy needs some help fighting the algorithm, and I can't do it without you. And thanks so much for those who have already. But back on topic. What changed my opinion of Teen Titans Go, and how can this apply to you? I'm the guidance guy, and your internet school counselor is on the job. Let's set the stage. My experience with Teen Titans didn't come from the comic book adventures, but from the original animated series from the early 2000s. Now, if you're one of the 20 or so people who actually have HBO Max, you can watch the whole series to understand where I'm coming from. Here was a collection of teen heroes being led by the ultimate sidekick fighting crime and living life. There was action, drama, comedy, romance, and had a little bit of everything for everybody. And what was the kicker for me was the fact that they didn't have secret identities. The Titans didn't play the students by day, world savers by night routine that so many others do in their situation. Nah, they went bump school, we do this full time. Naturally, as a school counselor, I can't condone that action in real life, but this is fiction, so we're good. Believe me when I say that this show is every bit as good as you've been told. But then business had to get involved and the show got canceled in 2006. Then fast forward 7 years and the WB tells the world that there's a new Titan show ready to take the stage. I'm curious, I want to know what the successor of the Teen Titans will look like. I mean, shoot, they brought back all the original voice actors. What could possibly go wrong? The thing was, I wasn't ready for, let's call it the tonal shift that was Teen Titans Go. The drama and tension that once existed in the show was no more, with the comedy and hijinks cranked all the way up. It felt like you could go through a whole episode and not see the Titans take on crime or fight a villain once. Oh, the baddies will show up, they'll play a part of the story, but not in the way a superhero bad guy is supposed to. I thought the show was an abomination to the Teen Titans. It was as if the writers said to each other, what if the Titans didn't fight crime and were utter douchebags? But you know what? I don't have that opinion anymore. So what happened? Stay with me here. There was a point a few years ago when everybody was trashing this series, whether it was for the reasons I gave earlier or for other alleged sins committed. TTG was getting ripped a new one on the internet. But what happened to me? How is it that this video isn't joining the ranks of those other ones? My opinion of Teen Titans Go changed when I took a look at the Teen Titans Go vs. Teen Titans movie. I'm not gonna lie, the only reason I saw this thing was for the chance to see the original Titans crew in their original art style and their emotional tone one more time. And also for the chance to see these children get stopped by a better version of themselves. But as I watched the special, I started to notice something. That I didn't completely hate every moment with the Go Squad. Now, did every joke work for me? No, but there was a self-awareness that came with the dialogue, a level of, we know what you're saying about us, that the writers put into their work. And I'm an absolute sucker for that fourth wall breaking humor. And as I watched the Titans I knew interact with the Titans I thought I knew, I noticed my opinion of the new kids change. Does this mean that I'm now a TTG superfan? No, its humor doesn't always get me, but I have a new respect for the show that wasn't there before. And as I look back on that experience, I'm reminded of just how much we cast judgment on others, often with more basis in our perception of reality instead of reality itself. The word judgment has become one of those terms that has been taken by society and had its meaning twisted a little bit. These days we toss around the word judgment pretty much whenever someone says something about us that we don't like. It's become a shield of defensiveness meant to block all unwanted summary of us and then throw it back at the source with the accusation of ill will and bad faith. Many times what we call judgment isn't really judgment, but constructive criticism. None of us is perfect, so when someone with your best interests at heart begins to bring up areas of improvement in a non-confrontational way, you can't just call that insight judgmental just because you don't want to hear it. But my early opinions of TTG, that was casting judgment. Without any real understanding of the subject at hand, or desire to gain any understanding, I decided that Teen Titans Go was trash. That because it wasn't what I was used to, that it was inherently inferior. It always bugs me when boomers pull that nonsense, but here I was doing the exact same thing. And that's the major takeaway here. We gotta give experiences, ideas, and people a chance. Will we like everything we try? Heck no! But we always grow when we attempt to try. It gives us either a refreshing new perspective, a new favorite food, or become more educated on specifically why you hate a thing. But you can't gain perspective unless you go looking for it first. And that's how we could go from passing judgment to gaining a new understanding. Rise up, GG Nation, cause it's time for Guidance Guy Friday, your weekly guidance lesson from your internet school counselor. Last week, we talked sports, then Disney and anime before that. But today, let's talk Batman, the Guardian of Gotham, one of the biggest names in DC Comics, the original billionaire playboy philanthropist. Hey, no shit on you, Tony, but it's just facts, bro. Batman is a character that embodies resilience, and then uses that determination to body his enemies. Except in these movies where he just straight up kills people? Nah, that's not how he rolls. Hashtag not my Batman. And this guy has made it out of some insane situations, being buried alive, fighting Superman, and even taking on the Hulk? Yeah, that's the thing that happened. But what if I told you that there's a story where the Bat was so broken that not even he thought he could recover? Stay tuned. Let's go. It's guidance time. So before we go deep into the Batverse, let's review resilience real quick. Remember that resilience is the ability to bounce back from hard times. And the 3 ways to be resilient is to block out the haters, be creative, and never give up. And as we go through this video, look for where you think the Caped Crusader used these 3 tips. Also, while you're here, smack that subscribe button and throw a batarang to like this video. And also, spoiler alert for The Dark Knight Rises, just in case you have it on your watch list on HBO Max. And yes, I know it's called Max, I just don't care. The name is dumb, and they shouldn't have changed it. In DKR, our man Bruce is not in a good place. He's still mourning the death of his childhood friend from the last movie, and he's taking it so hard that he's now out of shape and even giving up the whole Batman gig. But when a group of criminals start framing him for crimes he didn't commit, he puts on the cowl once again to take those punks down. But there's one problem. The mastermind behind these string of lies, Bane, is bigger and stronger than our washed hero. The Bat gives it his all, but he ultimately gets wrecked by Bane. And when I say wrecked, I mean that Bane breaks his back.
Oh, your buddy!
Oh, you heard that crack, right? That's just, Listen, I can't even watch those chiropractic videos.
Drop the head over.
Ugh, it's just too much for me. I felt that. B-Man then gets flown over to the Middle East and literally thrown into a pit that goes miles into the ground and is left to rot while Bane pretty much takes over Gotham. Now, this is one of the lowest points that Batman has ever been at. He's broken, both in body and spirit. His city is being taken over by someone who talks like this. I don't know why they chose that voice. It's just ridiculous. And he's stuck in a pit in the middle of the desert where everyone keeps telling him that pretty much no one gets out of there alive. It really doesn't get any worse than that. And yet, even in his lowest moment, the spirit of the Bat still lives in Bruce Wayne.
Torture. Yes. But not of your body. Of your soul.
So the world's greatest detective just got the world's biggest beatdown and has been left in the pit to watch as Bane tries to burn Gotham to the ground. So what does he do next? Well, he's Batman. So what do you think he does? He doesn't give up and he tries to get his back right. But the way he does it though? Okay, look, just to be sure we all understand, this doesn't work in real life. Doing this to someone else's broken back will definitely make it worse, okay? But movie logic aside, Bruce is able to stand and walk again, and then he spends the next 5 months getting physically ready to get back into action. He's doing the push-ups, the sit-ups, the whole thing. But B-Man isn't just doing this just to get back to Gotham, because there's something he needs to do first. Climb out of the pit! And even though he has all the skill and ability to do the job, his body isn't there yet. So he gets back into shape, gets his body and his mind ready for the climb. And as he finally gets ready to do it, all the inmates from the pit are cheering him on. They want to see someone finally get out of there. And when he begins that climb, and he climbs, you wonder if he's actually going to make it. But, true to the title, The Dark Knight rises from the depths of the pit. And where does he go from there? Back to Gotham, of course. He returns to a city on the verge of falling apart due to all the violence that Bane started. And oh yeah, there's a nuclear bomb in the city that's gonna go off. So Batman goes to work. He takes on the Masked Man, takes him down, stops the bomb, and is able to retire as Bruce Wayne, knowing that at long last, Gotham is safe. And this movie is insane. All the twists and turns that happen, and of course the action is always a blast. But in the fireworks show that is The Dark Knight Rises, let's not forget about the journey that Batman went on to bring said fireworks. If Mount Rushmore had superheroes instead of presidents, Batman would for sure be up on there. And perhaps the craziest thing about him is the simple fact that he has no powers.
What are your superpowers again? I'm rich.
No bruh, that's not a power. Nice try though. But even though he has no super strength or the ability to fly, the Caped Crusader does have one trait that's pretty much his super ability. And it's something that we can all use too. Resilience is a superpower. In a lot of ways, Bruce Wayne is a lot like us. He wasn't born on an alien planet, he doesn't have a magic ring, or can run so fast that he can go back in time. But then again, neither can us. But that's what makes him a boss. He's taken on everything from insane clowns, unstoppable monsters, and borderline gods, and he's not even walking into those battles with broken OP powers. Nah, he's got nothing but his wits, body, and will, and of course, his determination. We take it for granted, but Bruce didn't have to become a crime-fighting guy in a batsuit. He could have just used his money to make up for his missing parents, or given up on life and wallow in misery. But he didn't. He got creative in how he could carry on his parents' legacy. He blocked out the haters when people thought he was the bad guy, and even when facing Mr. Freeze, Bane, or a world ender like Darkseid, he never gave up. Batman made his choice, and we have the same decision to make. When difficulties come, are we going to give up and lay down? Or are we going to pick ourselves up and rise again? Rise up, GG Nation, because it's time for Guidance Guy Friday, your weekly guidance lesson from your internet school counselor. And today is opening day for the long-awaited Joker 2. Listen, I'm not French, I ain't gonna get none of that right. The movie that looks into the connection between the clown prince of crime and his right-hand lady. But here's the thing, I haven't seen this film yet, and even if I did, well, it's, it's
Rated R.
not that that's gonna stop some of you. So here's what we're gonna do. Let's look at the first couple of crime to answer the question. Can you save a bad relationship? We see toxic friendships all the time. And if we're brutally honest, you might be in one yourself. And in my work as a school counselor, I see it all the time. Friend A wants to quit friend B, but they just can't. They think the other person will change or that they could be the one to make them change. But is that true? Let's see if you should play the hero and save your toxic friendships. Let's go! It's guidance time!
It's a name that puts a smile on my face. It makes me feel there's someone here I can relate to. Someone who might like to hear my secrets.
So let's say you have what can be called a toxic relationship. Let's first define what that even is. A toxic friendship is a relationship in which one person mistreats the other. And this could look like a lot of different things. So we're gonna look at the mad clown and his jester to see how many red flags we can spot, and then ask yourself if you see any of those problematic behaviors in your relationships. You ready? With Joker and Harley, their story starts at the rest stop for every Batman villain, Arkham Asylum, where the Joker is put in there for the millionth time for almost blowing up the city or whatever. While he's there, the mad clown meets Dr. Harleen Quinzel, a psychiatrist who's assigned to take on his case. That's right, before she was a clown, Harley Quinn was a doctor, son. As Quinzel works with the man who smiles, he goes into full tragic backstory mode. He tells her about his father who would smack him around relentlessly, and how hard little Joker tried to make his old man smile. A sad story to be true, but I'ma raise the first red flag here, cause the thing is, everything about that is a lie.
Why you always lying?
Whatever story Mr. J told his new therapist was nothing more than a story he made up, and you might encounter the same thing. It could be a so-called friend who tells stories that make you go,
Stop the cap.
or they make up rumors about you and spread them to others. Either way, if you know anyone like that, then stay with me. You might be asking, but why would Joker lie? What does he get out of it? Legit question, and the answer is this. The Joker created this Lifetime movie of an origin story in order to manipulate Harley to make her feel sorry for him. He wanted her to think, oh no, he's the victim actually, so Dr. Q could take his side and see things his way. Now we all know that the Joker is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. But it's debated whether or not Harley is mentally ill too, or if she's just straight evil like that. Either way, the truth is that Harley was tricked, which is our second red flag. When someone is manipulating you, they might tell you their version of the story, but leave out anything that can make them look bad. Or they might tell you to not be friends with someone anymore, or they'll tell other people not to be friends with you. And what's the main goal of all this puppeteering? Control. Folk who run toxic friendships want to control everyone involved. They want things done their way, their friends to act the way they want them to act, and those who don't get punished. Which leads to the third red flag. One person does all the work. Harley and Joker ain't Lois and Superman, being all lovey-dovey and getting along and stuff. Nah, these two are a disaster. Harley does all the work in the relationship. She looks out for Mr. J, helps him with his goals, messed up as they are, cause trying to off Batman really shouldn't be on anybody's bucket list, and cares about him. But the green-haired goon, you don't care about her? He's all in it for himself. In fact, there are many times in their story where we see Harley Quinn go to jail for the Joker or help him get away while she rots away in Arkham while he does nothing to help her. You may be thinking, whoa, that's messed up. Who would put up with that? Well, let's keep it a buck. Some of you do. Yeah, it's not as extreme as going to jail for somebody, but it could look like your friend only wanting you to listen to their problems while you never get to share yours. Or it might be they expect you to compliment them all the time while they get to roast you to a crisp. And all of this ends in drama. You have friends and then you don't. You have a big blow up with this person every other week, only to make up and start all over again. Trust, I see this way too often in schools. And as we see with our Chaos duo, this is not just a student problem. But before we move on, take a moment to squash that subscribe button and give a like to this video if you like where this is going. So let's say that you see these red flags with Joker and Harley, and you might be asking, why don't they just split up? Fair point. But let's put it another way. That friend that you know you have drama with, why don't you just split up with them?
And now all this gal wants is to settle down with her lovin' sweetheart.
You and the Joker?
Right, Rooney?
Looking just at HQ for a sec, we know that she knows better than to be around a psychotic supervillain who just wants to watch the world burn. I mean, she's a mental health doctor for crying out loud. But to her, the Joker is just a misunderstood comedian. A smooth criminal, if you will. But before we dunk on the doctor for being too dumb to see that evil clown is evil, watch out, cause someone could say the same thing about you. Why do you stay in a toxic mess of a friendship? Maybe you think they can change, or that you can be the one to change them. Or maybe you think that you can't do any better, and that this is the best you can do. Or worse, you somehow deserve this. And I'm gonna cut right here to tell you that if you believe that, you're believing a lie. No one deserves to be mistreated, lied to, told who to be friends with, or have rumors spread about. Absolutely not. And if you truly believe that, please reach out to someone who cares about you. But let's say that you think that ghosting this bad influence would be wrong, that maybe you could save them and make them better. Well, that's the question of the video, isn't it? So let's go there. Can you save your toxic friend? Should you even do it?
I've never seen you laugh before. Cut it out! You're giving me the creeps!
You little fool. The Joker doesn't love anything except himself.
With this, I'm gonna keep the answer as simple as possible.
No.
It is not your job, responsibility, or destiny to save a friendship that's only hurting you. Because here's the thing about relationships. Good friendships have give and take. Bad friendships have one person doing all the giving and the other doing all the taking. That's not okay. It's not healthy, and in some cases, it's not even safe. And I'll say this too. Most of the time, the person who's mistreating you doesn't want to change. Sure, they may say it when they get caught up in a lie and it's time to kill the beef, but you'll be right back in that same spot a few weeks from now if you keep it up. Let's look back at the first couple of crimes. We know that Joker will always treat Harley badly, no matter what she does or doesn't do. If she was real, you would tell Harley to bump Joker and move on. Now, I'm not saying that your problematic person is a homicidal maniac. Nah. What I am saying is that if your person wanted to change, you would have seen it by now. Not hear it on their 10th apology or hear them promise yet again that they'll change only for them to not. And though we don't know how Joker 2 ends, I can tell you that in the comics and other stories, Harley does eventually break up with the Joker and live a full life as her own person. She's still crazy, but she gets better. Harley Quinn learned that it's not her job to be the Joker's hero, but in the end she could only be her own hero in making her life better. Now for those of you who want to save someone else, let me ask you, are you willing to save yourself instead?